Hello and thank you for watching. This is STSC back again with LEGO Transformers Dead End. Recently, WowBlock on Instagram made a really incredible 8-wide barricade build, which I'll link in the description below. When I saw that model, it got me really inspired, and I was dying to try and make an 8-wide car of my own. And this is what I came up with. At the time, I had just bought the new Speed Champions Ferrari set, which happened to be a red car with a yellow stripe, and when trying to think of characters I could build, it seemed like the Stunticons were a pretty obvious choice for Speed Champion style builds. And since it lined up that I had a new windshield piece, which was red with a yellow stripe, I decided why not build Dead End. This model isn't really meant to represent any one particular car. I wanted to keep it vague and just make a imaginary vehicle mode, at least for my first attempt at making a Speed Champions Transformer. But I did draw a lot of inspiration from Transformers Prime Knockout in this alternate mode. I've always felt that him and Dead End are kind of linked, since they're both red and yellow Decepticon cars and they both work with Breakdown. So I thought it could be cool to draw some cues from Knockout when designing a new Dead End, which you'll especially see in the robot mode as well. Personally, I think this car mode turned out pretty great and it looks super slick in my opinion, but there are definitely some issues. Notably right here, there is kind of a gap where the windshield stops and there's nothing to continue that slope. And there's also kind of some visible fingers back here. But all in all, I think, especially for my first attempt at making a Speed Champions Transformer, I'm pretty happy with what I came up with. Unfortunately, there is just a tiny bit of robot mode detailing in his undercarriage, which does kind of drag when trying to roll him. He is able to roll, but as you can see, it does drag. Of course, if I wanted to, I could just swap these out for smaller pieces, but I really like how it looks in robot mode, and I've decided to prioritize the robot mode. Another case of prioritizing the robot mode is actually in the hood here. You can see these tiles actually stick up a little bit. That's because his head is under there, and the head is just barely too tall to actually fit under those tiles, which is kind of frustrating, but I really like the head I came up with, and I didn't want to change it, so I'm okay with this slight little bit of flex here. For size comparison, here we have a minifigure, so you can see that he is about the size of your standard Speed Champions car. And since I don't have any other Speed Champions builds to show him with, here he is with Donut. I have to say, I'm super proud of this car mode. While it does have its issues, I think it turned out great for my first attempt at a Speed Champions scale Transformer, and I'm really excited by the prospect of making more characters at this scale. But that's all there is to say about the car mode, so now it's time to transform. Here we have Dead End in his robot mode, and right off the bat, you can probably tell where I took a major design cue from Transformers Prime Knockout. I've given Dead End here a very similar chest, with the headlights and front fenders forming big shoulder pads or chest armor here. It's not one-to-one, but I think the homage is pretty clear. I also tried to draw inspiration from G1 Dead End, mostly with the wheel placement. You can see the wheels are here on his shoulders, though I actually came up with the idea of having them slide out like this pretty late in the process. Originally they were just like this, and I felt like the shoulders looked kind of weedy. But with the tire actually popped out like this, I think it looks pretty cool. And while the wheel isn't actually part of the shoulder, I think it kind of fools your eye and makes it look similar to the G1 character. The rear wheels are also located on the insides of his shins, which is where they were on the G1 toy and cartoon model. I'm always a fan of Transformers who have noticeably different color schemes between their two modes. So when designing this guy, I made an effort to have a lot of his robot mode be a different color from the car. You can see his legs are almost entirely black in this mode, and his torso is light gray. I also made his shoulders mostly black, so they would hopefully blend in more with the tires. I think it's a really striking look and helps make the two modes very visually distinct. And it kind of has that magic look of how does that even transform into the other thing, because they're just so noticeably different. Of course, like most things, there is a logical answer to how it transforms, and in this case, there is some kibble here. You can see the roof and the hood end up on his back. I do think they look pretty cool. I think it's pretty tasteful kibble, but it is kibble, and it's not amazing. It probably could fold up closer, but considering this has to be a single piece, I thought it would be nice to just have it hanging out there and not restricting articulation in any way. I mentioned in the car mode that his head was a little too big to fit under the hood, and I think it's specifically this stud here that's the culprit. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with how this head looks. I think it looks pretty cool, but also a little bit silly, and that's how I like my Transformers. So I've stuck with it, even if it makes the car mode a little bit less solid. I've built two accessories for Dead End, a buzzsaw as another reference to Knockout, and a rifle. The rifle can simply peg into his thumb, but the buzzsaw has to replace his hand entirely. For size comparison, here we have a minifigure. And here we have Donut. For articulation, Dead End's head can look up and down. It can kind of look left and right, but you have to be very careful because it's really easy to knock off the lower end of his face. At the shoulders, he has a ball joint, which allows for in and out movement as well as forward and back. The wheel here does get in the way, but it can simply be popped back in to allow for more range. There's also an outward joint here at the T-joint, which can help with making the arm bend outwards and maybe look a little bit more natural than swinging it out on this joint, where it does look maybe a little bit awkward. He also has a 90-degree elbow, as well as an inward-facing elbow joint, and a ball joint at the wrist. At the hips, he can kick forward and backward, as well as in and out. He also then has a thigh swivel here, which I've specifically left a little rounded bit here so that the thigh can swivel really easily without hitting on the inside of his waist here. He has a knee bend, which is kind of hindered a lot by this bit, but if you get that out of the way, it can get about 90 degrees. And then his foot is on a hinge and a swivel. That's honestly one of the most fragile parts of the build. It's just a single robot hand here. So it is a little bit tricky to get him standing sometimes. I really enjoyed experimenting with the Speed Champion scale while designing Dead End, and I think in the future I'll definitely make more characters at this scale. But for now, I just have Dead End. If you want to build this guy for yourself, I'll have instructions available on my Patreon. Membership is $3.50 American each month. But that's all there is to say for now, so I'll see you next time.